Depending on how your wedding invite is written, it can have different influences on those you want as guests. Invites deliver the big news of your wedding to family, friends, and others. Creating the perfect wedding invite is essential if you're going to get your big day off to a beautiful start. Inviting doesn't necessarily have rules, but here are some beginner tips to guide you in making show-stopping wedding invitations. Guest list. Before you start making your invitations, you have to have a guest list. The guest should include only the people you want to come to your wedding. This may consist of family members, friends, co-workers, and peers. If there are any exclusions you wish to make, such as the people that you don't want to attend, create a do not invite list. Remember, it's your wedding. If you don't want young children to cause a fuss or for those crazy relatives to cause a scene, then make sure you avoid inviting them. Another thing to decide is if plus ones are allowed to create the list. Sit down with your partner and determine who you want to invite to the wedding. When you both agree on who will be invited, it's time to start planning how to ask them. Planning the invites. It may take a while to plan, but preparing will be beneficial. When planning your wedding invitations, you must take into account budget, design, and delivery. Budget. We all know that weddings are a considerable expense. However, nobody should overspend on wedding invites. Since we have access to the internet, there is no need to spend a penny on invitations. You can create invitation cards online on graphic design platforms like Canva. Within seconds, invitations can be sent via email, text, or through other messages. If you want to use only invitations but are unfamiliar with designing, you can hire a graphic designer to make you a template. This prevents you from paying any extra costs. You can take the time to write the guest names on the template yourself. Instead of getting charged more by the graphic designer by assigning them with making an individual invite for each guest, you can do that yourself. Let's say that you want to do paper invitations. Mailing, paper, and craft materials are the primary cost of physical invites. First, create a budget of money that you are able and willing to spend on inviting your guests. Next, pick out the materials that you want to use. Lastly, figure out how you are going to deliver the messages. You can provide their invites in person for the guests who live close to you and your partner. When it comes to those who live farther away, figure out the cheapest method of mailing cards. Once you know your budget and the type of invitation you'll use, it's time to design. Design. This is undoubtedly the most fun part of the invitation process. Designs should always correspond with your wedding theme. If your wedding is minimalist, then make sure your invite design matches your theme's simplicity. If your wedding revolves around spring, then incorporate flowers, animals, and other natural elements. Unless you and your partner want to stray away from the theme, sticking to it is a great choice. Once you know the vibe you want on your invites, it's time to design what they will look like. Either you or a professional designer can complete this step. You design the invites. If you, possibly along with your partner, want to design the invitations, then that's awesome. Maybe you are a designer, or you just have an eye for creativity. A wonderful part of creating your invitations is directly speaking to your guest through your creation. There are limitless possibilities when it comes to the finished design. Have fun with it, and don't stress yourself over the final result. Either way, your guests should be impressed with the invitations you have worked hard to make. A professional designs the invites. Designing may not be your forte or could have zero interest to you and your spouse. Luckily, there are lots of design businesses and freelance graphic designers out there. Depending on your budget, find a source that you can afford. Please make sure you communicate with your invite designer so they can bring every idea you have to life. If you are unsure of exactly what you want, give your designer a general idea. Next, allow them to draft a few examples to see if they can create the perfect invitation design for your wedding. Finally, regularly check in on your designer and work together until both of you have met all expectations. Working with a professional can truly elevate your invite design. What to mention in the wedding invites. After your concept has become a real design, now you have to figure out what has to be mentioned on the invitations. Forgetting important information is a huge mistake. This is why you should mention these 5 things in the invitations. Incorporating these details will help you share important wedding day information. Location. Fully describe where the location of your wedding. Give the complete address and exact spot where guests are to arrive. If your wedding is far away, then provide pricing for plane tickets or other means of transportation. Lastly, mention any details associated with the location. Time. Include the time frame when guests should be arriving. Then add a baseline of when certain parts of your wedding will be taking place. This doesn't need to be a full itinerary, but start time, end time, ceremony time, and meal times are great to include. Attire. Nobody should overshine the future married couple. In the invite, clarify the type of attire you want your guests to show up in. If you're going to follow the Western tradition that forbids guests to wear white, include that detail. Then, simply establish the dress code so that all guests can know what to wear. For example, some guests may not know that black tie attire is formal or dress for certain subcategories of casual. Under the attire title, add a brief description so guests don't show up in something entirely against the dress code. Rules. Clarifying rules beforehand can prevent your wedding from being a disaster. What is supposed to be a special day can be ruined by guests who forget what weddings are actually about. Here are some rules to add to your list that often stops terrible moments from ruining weddings. Are children allowed? Children are hard to deal with and don't pair well with weddings. If you are okay with children attending, then that's great. However, some people may not want extra distractions tampering with their wedding day. If that pertains to you, see if you can get guests with kids to find childcare in advance. Engagements and pregnancy announcements. You may know of people who had their spotlight stolen away on their wedding day. Sometimes guests think that weddings are the perfect time to share their huge news. Most people wouldn't want someone else to overtake their wedding by making a shocking announcement. Unfortunately, there are several online stories of engagements and pregnancy announcements ruining wedding days. If you don't want your guests to engage in these practices, then make a rule forbidding these events. Behavior. How people act on your wedding day can dictate how the day will turn out to be. Crazy outbursts, fights, getting very drunk, being rude, or any other obscene behavior shouldn't be tolerated. Gifts. One of the best parts about weddings is receiving gifts to kick off married life with your spouse. It's your wedding, after all, so share things you'd like to receive without being greedy. In case you don't want gifts, mention that in the invites. Couple names. This may seem silly, but don't forget to mention the name of you and your partner at the top of the invitation cards. Ensure that you two are the highlight of the invitation itself. Why wording matters. What was intended as an endearing message can come across as distasteful when worded incorrectly. The key to invitation messages is to use appropriate language that's quick to the point. When inviting your guests, use phrases like honor of your presence and the pleasure of your company. Not only are these lines respectful, but they make your guests feel welcomed. The end goal is to be thoughtful in the invitation message, either traditional, high-formality writing or simple, sweet writing. The way you invite your guest can decide if they attend your wedding. This is why courtesy matters. How was this video? Do you like it? Give your feedback in our comments section below. Please subscribe to our channel Best for Bride for future updates and visit our website, www.bestforbride.com.